Hello, John Arnold. We have started a little bit early. We
Hey,
are
Allison.
live. How are you?
I'm excited. I'm pretty pumped up. Got my morning walk in, had a good breakfast, and I'm excited. I'm really excited. What about you?
Well, I'm very excited. I'm coming to you live from the Embassy Suites in Little Rock, Arkansas. I had to come down here for a meeting today, and so I'm actually set up with all kinds of crazy technology, and it's amazing that we can do these things live. I have struggled with time management for years. For those of you that are logging in and waiting for that magic 10 o'clock moment, we are so glad you're here. We're getting people from all over the world. There is a chat box below. We hope that you'll introduce yourself so that we'll know who you are. Tell us how you are feeling this morning, what you're hoping to get out of this. At the end, we're going to be doing some question and answer, and so I am just crazy excited that this live technology is here.
Good. I love it. We have guests comment. It will be much cooler when I get my chaotic and toxic schedule in order. That's what we're here for today.
Out over the next few minutes and where we're going from here. So welcome, John Arnold.
Woo! All right. Yeah, it's my pleasure to introduce what we're going to be doing today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm John Arnold, Chief Inspiration Officer here at the 7-Minute Life. And a few minutes joined us, I was saying today is an opportunity to try to get at the real root of the problem that puts us in a position where we're constantly saying things like, when I finally have time, I'm going to, you can fill in the blank, or if I could just get a moment, I'd love to, or someday I'm going to. You know, we're always living in this place of deferred joy if we're not consciously exercising control over how we use our time. And that's what we're going to be digging into. What does it mean to be consciously exercising control over our lives, over the time that we have? We all get the same 24 hours, and it just boils down to how we're using those 24. So you're going to walk away with a lot of pretty concrete tips you can work on, and then some principles that are absolutely critical to understand to put the tips together to work effectively. So about what is time management and what are the problems?
I will. And John, I just want to make sure that you can see the slides on the screen now. This is live technology.
I can.
All right, so we're on a slide that says Time Management 101. And in the email we sent out when we were originally talking about this, we said that there are some problems that have plagued me personally. And two really stand out to me, that I have a drive to constantly get more done. And when we originally started this 7-Minute Life, it was about getting more done and getting it done more efficiently. But what I found out is that that was actually trapping me in this constant state of chaos. I somehow never knew what needed to be done first or how I was going to have time to get it all done. I just felt like I was living in this ever more stressful and frustrating world of busyness. The second thing that happened to me is that I was looking for some sort of secret to time management, a magic wand that could fix all of it. I wanted a process that would allow me to do more. And I had read a lot of books and done a lot of research, and I found a lot of time management tools that would help me do more, and they were helpful. But I still was feeling a lot of frustration. In our last webinar, John, you asked a very powerful question that said if someone had taken 10 minutes to write down all the things they needed to do today, and somehow they could wave a magic wand over it, have it all done, the question that you asked, would it have made a difference? Would it have made a difference in their lives? Would they have been able to spend more time with their children? Would they be doing things that were purposeful and exciting in their life? And so I think the whole point of Time Management 101 is we're going to be talking about 3 things that can help you actually do less but do more of the right things. So that's where I really believe we're going. And what I want people to understand is that it never has been about time. Time cannot be managed. The only thing that we can manage is ourselves. And so we can manage the choices we make. We can manage who we decide to let into our life, the activities that we decide to let into our lives, and we get to choose whether or not we're going to begin to do that now or whether we're just going to continue to do the things that we've always done. There is plenty of time to do what you think is most important. And so when I was planning for this webinar, I went to one of my favorite sources for research, and that is Wikipedia. And so if you have the handout, you can download it straight from the link at the top that says, here's the handout, the slides are there. If you don't have the handout and you're just listening, you can just take some notes. But these are 3 important skill sets to improve your time management. This is back to the basics, and here they are. The 3 takeaways that we want you to have is, number 1 is planning. Number 2 is exercising conscious control over the amount of time you spend on certain activities, and that makes sense. And the 3rd one is the process of reducing the amount of time that you spend on non-priorities. And so I think that those things sound pretty simple, but when you hear us really discuss them and all the facts that you're going to hear in the next few minutes, I believe this is going to be life-changing. And I want to start with the first one, which is planning. And as I look at that, I realize that there is limited capacity. When you look at a calendar, there are only 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 168 hours every week. And John, I'd like for you to begin to talk about how what we make a decision of what we let into our calendar affects us. So John,
Sure.
can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah. The bottom line principle of limited capacity is that whatever you choose to allow into your day, it automatically means you're choosing to knock out a different task out of your day. So whenever we put something in, because it's a finite bucket, something's not going to be able to be placed in there. And I had this wonderful conversation, I think illustrates this really well. It was a number of years ago, and I was standing around a copier with someone in our office, a neighboring pastor who'd come by to use our copier. He was also a therapist and a dad, a spouse, so he had a lot of hats on. And he was, I asked him how he was doing. He said, "Oh, I'm so busy." How many people felt that? Give me a shout out in the comments if you've been there. But he said, "I'm so busy," and here's the words, fateful words. So many times I've heard people say, "I just have to learn to say no more often." Anybody say that? If you did, drop me a smiley face or something down in our chat bar. But he stood there saying, I just need to know how to say no better. And I looked at him and I said, "No, that's not true. You're really good at saying no." And he was like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, you've said no to sleep. You've said no to spending time with your family. You've said no to eating well. You've said no to exercise." And he started laughing with me when he realized what I was trying to say to him. And I said, what you really need to do is learn how to say yes to the right things. And when we talk about limited capacity, we're just flagging the harsh reality that whenever we make whatever we choose, there are some hidden choices there. If we choose to spend hours on Facebook, those are hours we don't get to spend on our goals. They're hours we don't get to spend with our children. So that's kind of the heart of it. And we're going to work with you during this webinar and future webinars on equipping you with the skills so it becomes easier and it becomes your natural response to say yes to the right things and start saying no to the things you actually don't want in your life instead of saying no to the things you do want in your life. So I'll leave it at that unless you want to add more, Allyson.
No, that is a powerful story. And what's so fun about this is that we actually have a dress rehearsal for these. And John, I had never heard that story until last night. And I guess one of the greatest parts of being a teacher is that I write all these things and learn all these things from me. They impact me, and that story really hit home because I realized that time management has a price. Time is how we experience life. And so every minute like right this minute, I'm enjoying life. This is what I'm called to do. I'm in the zone. I'm talking to people, sharing ideas with people all over the world. What a privilege. But time management is so important, and there is a price, and it is a heavy price. And the price of time management is planning. And I will tell you that people hate to plan. When I hear, oh, I've got to go to a strategic planning meeting that's going to last 3 days so we can do our business plan for the year, how many people get really excited about that? How many of those people actually does get excited about it? But I will tell you, planning is hard. And part of that is that we just don't know how to plan. But here's the offside of that, is that executing without a plan is even harder. And John, I know that you have a story about the price that you paid for not planning. Can you share that story?
Yeah, I can. The very 2.5 years ago, Allyson and I did our first webinar together, and at that time, I had just gotten my first planner, and I sprung this story on her, and she's asked me to tell it over and over again since then, because I think it captures a place where a lot of people are. For those of you who don't know, I'm a pastor, and pastors have pretty busy, demanding lives. I hate to burst your bubble. If you think we only work on Sunday and we get paid to read books and visit people, that is a slim shadow of where we spend our time. And I was early on in ministry bad about saying yes to anything I got asked to do as long as I didn't have a direct conflict. If I had a filter, my only filter was, am I available or not? So somebody'd say, hey, can you do this on Thursday night? I don't have anything. I didn't have any criteria for saying yes or no other than whether I was available. So I said yes over and over again. And what I found was that soon, literally, I was doing something every night and working all day. And one night, I was coming home late, not unusual, from something, and I had my daughter Ruth with me. She's now 20 years old, and she had to only be about 2.5 or 3, I would guess, because she was toddler size, walking and talking, and we were coming home late, and I was stopping by the church office to pick something up that I'm sure I thought was really important, and probably so that I could work on it when I got home even later. And as we were standing there in the dark at the back door, and I'm fumbling with my keys trying to get them in the lock in one hand, and I'm holding her little 3-year-old toddler hand in my other hand, she looks up at me and she says, Daddy, do you live here? And that pretty much cut me to the core. And at that time, I didn't have a toolbox like I have now to know how to turn that situation around. I had to just jump in, and I had to talk to someone about cutting my hours from full-time to part-time while I got my act and my life together. And I really wish I'd had the kind of tools we're going to share today, because I had no filter for weighing one priority against another priority. And when you don't have that, you can't plan. You're just living completely reactive to the demands that are in front of you. And that's really the cost of not planning. I would kind of say, the way I would put it is, planning doesn't cost us. Planning's an investment. When we expend time, energy, effort, money, it's a cost if we don't get a return on it. It's an investment if we get a return on it. And planning is an investment with a high return. Failure to plan, that costs you. And it costs you with stress. It can cost you with depression. It can cost you memories that you could have with your family. It can cost you just an untold price if you are not taking time to plan your life and you live reactively. Because you're going to get to down the road and you're going to look back and go, what did I get done? And I don't want you in a place where I was of stacking up moments of standing at the back door with my daughter wondering if I lived there. So that was the cost for me when I didn't know how to plan.
Wow, that is very powerful. And I want to say that planning can be done. And so many of the books that I read, I knew I needed to plan, but I didn't have a tool to plan. And so I created, almost 10 years ago now, a little worksheet called the Daily Progress Report. And for those of you that are new to the 7-Minute Life, you can download that for free every day on our homepage. You don't even have to put in an email. Just go to the homepage, the7minutelife.com, scroll down to some of our popular tools, and you'll see the Daily Progress Report there, and you can download it at no cost. But what I needed was a written plan of action. And I needed a tool. So it doesn't matter really which tool you use, but you need a tool that you can rely on every day to capture exactly what it is. And for those of you looking at this, the most important thing to me was in the top right corner, and we'll talk about this a little more at the end, but is what will I do 5 before 11? That was the one thing. If I could come in and have a daily written plan of action that says, here are the 5 things I'm going to do today, and do them, then that was time well spent. But what I found would happen is that I would come in with a to-do list of some sort that I had not committed to, and I'd put the to-do list beside me, and all of a sudden the phone would start ringing, or someone was knocking on my door, or this fire drill of life came in, and it would be 5 o'clock, and I'd look at my to-do list, and I'd done none of them. So it's more than just having a to-do list. It's about making commitments and creating focus and priorities and planning of things that you say you'll do and then doing them. And so, John, that comes into this second part of exercising conscious control over the amount of time you spend on specific activities, because just like I had said, I would have a to-do list that I thought was important,
right?
But that is not where I would spend my time. Can you kind of explain what this second takeaway, this really important takeaway is, and how it will impact their life?
Yeah, let's look at conscious control. And Allyson, the slide I'm seeing is the opening slide. If you could advance that maybe to you may came in a little late. We're talking about a second principle of exercising conscious control over how we use our minutes. And I want to do a little compare and contrast between what we mean by conscious control of your time at 7 minutes as opposed to how I think a lot of people are living. Earlier I said living reactively. What I used to do is I would go into my day and I would have some unwritten thoughts, expectations, intentions about what needed to get done that day. You know, oh, I've got to work on this report. I need to do some preparation for my sermon. Probably should get started on Sunday school class. I would have those thoughts in my head, not written down anywhere. I would go into the day, and I would hit the door, and the phone would ring, and I would be reacting to a phone call that came in. And then I would check my email, and one email would lead me to another email, which might lead me to Facebook or YouTube, and I would find myself kind of willy-nilly reacting throughout until, wow, I'd look up, it'd be lunch, and I maybe had not even touched what I was intended on working on. If I had, probably had very intermittent, distracted time around it. And that's really living reactively, and it's starting with today, and then I would move along, and my todays would stack up until I'd get to 90 days, and I'd look back and I would have marginally accomplished probably what I hoped to accomplish in the next few months. Wouldn't have anything written down, and would say, oh, you know, by the time summer rolls around, I need to have this, this, and this in place. And I'd be halfway there, and I would always be living on the edge of feeling behind. And when that happens, those 90 days then stack up, and that's when you get to that position I was talking about earlier of looking back on your life and seeing lots of missed opportunity and not really seeing the accomplishment that you wanted. But feeling, here's the thing, I was going to bed every day feeling extremely busy, feeling like I worked every minute. Why didn't I get anything done? So that's reactive. Now, conscious control of your life starts by flipping that entire process on its head. And what we encourage you to do is to take, and Allyson, I think I'm going to go ahead and, is it okay if we move into talking about values, purpose, and goals?
Yep.
Can I go ahead and move into that? Okay. To consciously live, to consciously conduct yourself each day, you have to have a set of filters for your choices. Without that set of filters, the filter is going to be other people's expectations and whatever is immediately before you and feels urgent. The conscious filters that we really encourage you to put in place are two things. First, knowing clearly what your values are, defining your top 10 values, whether it's family, faith, teaching, creating, whatever those values are. And there's a worksheet on the 7-Minute Life page that you can go to, download, and fill out. It takes a handful of minutes to do it, but will pay for itself in time over and over again. And when you we identify our values, identify our purpose, that reason for being. To me, purpose is the why behind what you do. It's the need that your actions serve in the broader world. It's really about service. It's really about love. What is your purpose? Why are you here? And once you're armed with your values and purpose, it's only at that point that you can intelligently and effectively put in place goals that you're excited about and that are compelling to you. So once those goals are in place, then that drives what you consciously choose to put in a written plan for the day using that daily progress page to guide you as you walk through the door and not be just reactively living. And instead you're saying, I'm going to work on these priorities. I'm going to work on these tasks because they're the ones that are going to yield the result in my life that I need. And the other stuff I'll deal with, but I'm going to deal with this first. Do you want to add anything more to that, or would you like me to elaborate on something particular, Allyson?
Well, John, can you see the funnel that I've put on the screen?
Right now I've got today in front of me, big blue block.
Okay, well, for some reason we're not getting...
there you go. There's the funnel.
You see it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I see it. I see the prioritize and purpose worksheet behind them.
Okay, so we may just have to leave it like this. For some reason, when I share the slides, people are not getting them.
Okay.
So I think that what you're talking about is having some sort of filter. And
right.
These tools are in their handout so that they can filter what it is that they're going to be doing. And so, John, can you just kind of wrap this little section up about conscious and reactive by looking at this slide?
Sure. And I'll go back to the story of Ruth for just a moment. As I said earlier, I didn't have these pieces in place. I didn't have a written set of values that I could go to, concretely look at, and use as an instrument to weigh out my choices or filter my choices. Now, what happened for me was, in that moment, suddenly I became consciously aware that family needed to be a higher value and that I needed it to put it over other things. So then what happened was when requests would come to me and somebody would say, hey, are you busy Thursday night? Instead of going, no, I would say, why, what's going on? You know, or I would look at Thursday night and say, is that a night that I really need to spend home with my family? If I decided that was a night I really needed to spend home with my family, I was filtering it through that value, I would look back at them and say, oh, I'm sorry, I've got another commitment. And sometimes they'd ask me, well, what are you doing? And I would tell them, I'm going to be at home with my family because I have multiple other obligations that week, and that's the only time I can spend with them, and that's important to me. And that's how these things begin to work, where when a request comes your way, whether it's directly like that or even indirectly, you're sitting at your desk and you're weighing through, well, should I do this or should I do that? You get to a place where you get in touch enough with your values and purpose and your goals, and then it just becomes a matter of saying, how does it fit my goals? Does this fulfill my goals? If it doesn't, no, I shouldn't spend my time on it.
So far we've talked about planning, which has a price.
Right?
You just finished talking about exercising conscious control over the amount of time you spend on certain activities and making sure they're filtering through. And now we're going to be talking about probably the most important takeaway. And this came straight from Wikipedia, but they apply in such different ways. The third takeaway, the third important skill set, is the process of reducing the amount of time you spend on non-priorities. Now, if you get nothing else from this webinar, it's the non-priorities that you've put on your to-do list, this unending bottomless to-do list somewhere. You've created a list, whether it's on the back of an envelope or on Post-it notes or somewhere, of all these little things that you need to do. And out of that list, some of them are priorities that are in alignment with what's important to you and that will push you forward towards your goal. And I assure you, some of these unfinished tasks that are left on your to-do list are not important, but they may be more fun to do than the things that you need to do. So, John, this life-changing piece about getting rid of the non-priorities in life can be best explained by you. So, John, can you take over from here?
Yeah, sure. Allison's got a picture of a football field just a couple yards off of the end zone there. And when I say football, that's American football. I know we got somebody here in Germany, so you might be picturing something different when I say football. But Allyson talks in her first book, The 7-Minute Difference, about the 1-yard line difference. And in that, she talks about how the critical difference between the people who really make it and succeed in being the person they want to be and having the life they want to have, their last yard. And right at the time I was hearing that from Allyson, and I was working my way through the 7-minute system, or an early prototype of that, and I was hearing her talk about that. Serendipitously, I got to go to a football game because my kids were in the band, and I went down to watch the game and see them perform at halftime. And it was an amazing, stellar game in that it came down to, at the last 50 seconds on the clock, our team was ahead, and we literally were on the 1-yard line from their end zone. We were ahead, and lo and behold, with 30 seconds left on the clock, we did a play, and 30 seconds left on the clock, they lost possession of the ball, and the other team scored and tied it up. We had to go into not just one overtime, we had to go into a double overtime. I will say proudly that our team, Texas High and Texarkana, Texas, we won when all was said and done. I give a shout out to my home team here for my kids. But we won with a lot of really needless fear, frustration, and extra effort of having to go into these additional overtimes and fearing that we were going to lose the whole game. And I told Allyson about that, and I said, it's how often in life are we down to that 1-yard line, and we just needlessly go through all kinds of angst, anxiety, and extra effort to score another run because we don't do that 1 yard. We don't push through that. And oftentimes the defining difference for me of whether I can complete that 1 yard or not is how weighed down, how much opposition I have from my own unfinished task. All those things that are just floating out there, getting in my way, standing between myself and that finish line. Because every unfinished task that we have, it's oppositional to you. And it is crying out to you. It's sucking energy from you. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times, and I won't go into it today, but if you listen to the principles of planning, you'll hear a story about me changing a light in our laundry room. And I walked by that thing for a year and a half, flipping the switch to a light that did not work, had fallen out of the ceiling, I guess miraculously thinking it was going to turn on again. But I would reflexively walk by, turn that on, and then feel disgust at myself for not having done anything about it. And that's a pretty mundane example. Start stacking up dozens of those things in your life. I looked back at my first planner, and the very first time I made a list of unfinished tasks, there were 29 items on there. Now, some of them were as simple as sewing a button on. Others were big projects that were laying around unfinished. And every one of those things was costing me immensely and standing in my way of being able to walk into the end zone, making that last yard almost impossible.
Wow. You know, John, I love the story of the 1 yard line. It is important in my life. And I want people to imagine themselves. How many projects do you have on your desk? How many things do you have that are swirling in your head that literally are just inches away from being completed, but there's maybe 1 or 2 steps left that you need to take to finish those projects and get them out of your life? And as we talk about pushing past the 1 yard line, I'm envisioning this 6'5" football player that's 36 inches away from scoring, and literally they could just reach out their arm and almost fall forward, just like gravity, just let momentum fall forward, and they could reach their goal. But something as simple as a text message coming in to you just as you're finishing your budget report, or someone knocking on your door and saying, hey, did you watch the football game last night? Something that simple could keep you from finishing your task, from actually scoring and ending up in the end zone. And so we want to help people realize that it's not the 99% that's the hard. It's not going the 99 yards. It's going the last yard. And
Right.
We're going to help you learn how to focus your full attention on just a few tasks every day. With every ounce of attention you have, you're going to be able to choose to start and completely finish tasks one at a time. Because I assure you, the next time that football team was on the 1 yard line, they focused their full attention and every ounce at pushing past into the end zone.
Yeah,
So
can I interject something?
Of course.
And you know, we're talking about not completing the goal, and I think this comes out in some subtle ways. You know, at work, let's say we're using the example of a report you need to finish, or I can use from, you know, my life as a preacher, working on a sermon or a Sunday school lesson. What happens a lot of times is it's not like I don't wind up getting a Sunday school lesson together, but what happens is I get together a Sunday school lesson that will kind of get me through that hour, but it's not the lesson I really wish that I could do. You know, and I just wonder how many folks who are listening to this right now have things where, okay, you know, I completed that report, or I got that event together, or I got that meeting done, but you walk away from it going, okay, I got it done, but you don't walk away from it celebrating. And I think oftentimes that's where, you know, it's a little bit subtle where we get robbed of the joy of things when we're not able to give them our full attention and complete them to the best of the ability. Because we walk away and in appearances, it looks like we made the touchdown, if you will, because we turned in the report or we got the class done. But there's nothing like getting one of those things done and feeling, I didn't just get this done, man, I knocked the ball out of the park. I loved this, and I had fun doing it, and it was really, truly my best effort.
Wow. You know, I realize how important that is. And this unfinished work task sheet, I'm not quite sure if I put it in the handout. If not, you can download it. All of these tools are in our member tools section under the fans. It's free. There's a link, I believe, at the bottom of the Hangouts page where you can become a fan by just putting in your first name and your email and then going to the time strategy tools. But this unfinished task worksheet, when I fill this out, and I do this on a regular basis, I realize that every unfinished work task personally has a price. And everything that's not done in my life costs me. John, what are those costs?
Oh, I see it every day as a pastor with people. Poor time management, bottom line, poor time management. Many people are paying for it with their physical health. I did, definitely, several points in my life. You pay for it with your physical health when you have lost sleep. How many of those unfinished tasks we were talking about have you laid awake at night wondering how you were getting done, being fearful, anxious about getting them done? So it introduces anxiety in your life. You can physically sick because of the stress of it. Live in enough sustained anxiety like that, you can wind up in depression, feel very overwhelmed. You don't slow down long enough to take care of the basics of life, like hydrating and taking care of your body. We weren't born to live a frustrated life, and each one of those unfinished tasks, what happens for me is they're a growing list of broken commitments. And it's not that they're just standing there reminding me that they need to be done. There's really an emotional price paid when we don't get them done, and it's very demanding. I think you described that really well, Allyson. You talk about them in terms of them not being benign, but those unfinished tasks, they talk to us in some pretty malicious ways. Do you?
Yeah, I'd love to share about that. Every morning when you make your to-do list, whether it's on an envelope or using the daily planner or creating your 5 before 11, when you write down those 3 or 4 or 5 or 20 things that you say you're going to do, and you look up at 5 o'clock and none of them are done, those unfinished tasks begin to talk to you. They literally, that left brain comes alive, and they're constantly swirling through your head saying, don't forget to pick up the dry cleaning. Why didn't you pay that bill on time? Did you get that budget report? Oh gosh, I forgot to call so-and-so. And they don't just talk to us trying to remind us, like friendly reminders that we need to do this. Somehow our brain adds judgment to these things that we don't do. And we find ourselves using this negative self-talk that literally belittles us. Mm-hmm. It labels ourselves as, hey, you said you were going to do this today, and you didn't do it. These broken commitments of not doing what's on our to-do list are very emotional and negatively charged. And subconsciously, and this is harsh, but subconsciously, when we break those commitments and don't complete those tasks, our mind is subconsciously calling us liars. And I mean, that's a very harsh word, but that's how I feel when I have something that was important to someone else or important to me, and I didn't get it done. I feel like I've let them down. I have lied to them. I said I would do it, and I didn't. So getting this unfinished task worksheet under control is likely one of the most powerful things that you can do. And so with that in mind, we created this daily progress report. Again, you can download it for free. You can get it anytime you want. But this single tool allows me to take all those unfinished tasks and begin to run them through that filter of my own priorities, of my own purpose and calling in life, of what I love to do. And I get to choose. I get to say, here are the 5 things that will let me in my life. Now, for those of you that are watching, John and Allyson are kind of the face of the 7-Minute Life, but I want to tell you, we have an entire team behind us. We have Manoj Singh and Sohan Singh and Ellen Sullivan and all of the community members. But Manoj Singh, who is our developer, is a person that thinks in getting things done. And he told me, he said, Allyson, if you will just do 3 positive things a day, the 7-Minute Life can explode. And this is my heartbeat and my passion. I want to share hope with people. I want people understanding their time management through a filter of doing what they do best. And I was trying to do too many things. And Minot said to me, Allyson, quit trying to do everything. Focus your attention on what will move you forward. And it came to me that if I would do just 5 things that really connected with my life, I could end the day saying, man, life is great. I don't have to do it all. I just have to do 5 really important things a day.
Right.
And that single sheet of paper that you're looking at on the screen right now changed my life. John, what do you have to say about that?
Well, I really think it's spot on. I had experience last weekend where I was sitting at our dining room table and I was working on a baby blanket for a friend, sewing a baby quilt, rag quilt. And I had this overwhelming sense for a moment of just, I really love my life. You know, it was like I was sitting there and I was like, I love my life. It just kind of came over me. And it was because I was spending time on things that really mattered to me. You know, I was really looking forward to my friend's response when they got this handmade baby blanket, and that I was taking time to do that, and I'd gotten to take time to do yoga earlier in the day, and those are things that struck at some of my core values. I would really encourage someone listening to this, when you talk about doing just 5 things, when you pick those 5, you know, we've talked about how malicious those unfinished tasks are. I don't think we've ever advised people this, but I'm going to throw this out there because I do it some on mine. I would advise you when you're early on and you've got this uber huge unfinished task list to actually, in your 5 before 11, 5 tasks you need to accomplish before 11, I would make 1 or 2 of those micro actions, small actions you're taking on unfinished tasks, because it's so important to get those unfinished tasks out of the way. I told Allyson only half jokingly last night, I've decided it's a goal for me that I'm going to get to a point where one day when I open up my next 90-day 7-minute life daily planner and I go to write unfinished tasks, I'm going to have nothing to write on that page. You know, I want to get to the end of 90 days with all my unfinished tasks done and 100% of my efforts on the stuff that's moving the ball of my life forward. That's really developing results and not just weeding out stress and those kind of things.
Okay, well, John, I'm going to step in here because I wanted to go to question and answers at 10:45, so I'm going to spend the next 3 minutes, and I'm just going to zoom past these next few things because I'm going to open it up to comments, and I'm very excited to have people asking us things, and I'll bring us back live. So I'm just going to kind of wind down what we've covered today. And I think what people were wanting to know is there really a secret to time management? I mean, we all want that magic wand. We all want to know, is there just one thing that if I would do this one thing, it would make my life more in alignment, it would allow me to prioritize, organize, and simplify my life? And the answer to that question is yes. I originally said no, there is no secret to time management because you can't manage time, but you certainly can do this. So I hope people are waiting with bated breath to know what this one secret is, because I was pretty excited. It's called the 1% rule, and this is what I mean. And I didn't make up this math. It just happens that this is the reality. We talked about planning and the price that planning costs. I'm going to ask everyone for the next week if they will take 1% of their day to plan, just 1% of the time of their day to plan, and look at how this math works out. There are 24 hours in a day. 24 hours times 60 minutes means there are exactly 1,440 minutes a day. If you would take 1% of that 1,440 minutes, it literally comes down to 14.4 minutes to think, to write, to dream, to plan. And why 7 minutes? Why is that important? How could you use those 14 minutes? What if you would take 7 minutes in the afternoon to take out the daily progress report for the next day and to think through what 5 things would really push forward this life that I want to live? And what if you're a corporate executive listening to this? This was a revelation I had yesterday. What if you had a daily progress report in front of 100 of your employees, and you encourage them to understand their priorities and their purpose and their passion in life and what they're good at? And every morning they would walk in with this on their desk because the afternoon before they had said, here are the 5 things that's going to push this company forward. If 100 people did that, if 100 people took 5 high-value activities and completed them before 11 o'clock the next morning, your company would have taken 500 positive steps forward. If you have 1,000 people working for you, that's 5,000 steps forward. It's just amazing. And the other 1% of your time would be taking 7 minutes in the morning before you look at your email, before you look at anything. Just have this one sheet of paper on your desk saying, wow, let me review. Here are the 5 things I said I was going to do before 11 o'clock. It's talking about getting to that 1-yard line. You've made a commitment to these 5 things. They are important. They're in alignment with what you need to do today. And you shut out all the other distractions and you commit to getting them done before 11 o'clock. It would not take long if you had 50 things on your unfinished task list, if you did 5 a day, to get through that. 10 days. Can you imagine 10 days from now, just by spending 1% of your time, 7 minutes in the afternoon planning, 7 minutes in the morning recalibrating, re-looking at, and then you could say at the end of the day, did I do what I said I would do? And John, I'm going to go ahead and finish this out. Can you imagine what it would be like at the end of every day if you could say, I got it done? What would that do for you emotionally? What would it do for you physically? Could you go home and then really spend quality time with your children? And I'm going to wrap up with these are the 3 things we said. We want to help you plan. We want to help you exercise conscious control over the amount of time you spend on specific activities. And we want to help you get rid of those non-priorities, those unfinished tasks that are talking to you and keeping you from what you want to do. And I'm going to close this segment before we open the question and answer with this photograph. For those of you that joined earlier, I told a story of Steve Cox being an NFL football player. He's a friend of mine. He lives in Jonesboro. He has a huge Super Bowl ring from when they won the Super Bowl. But this is a picture of Steve Cox when he was 10 or 11 years old with his father, hopping on a bus to go to his first punt, pass, and kick. And he told me a story that I did not publish in the book of the day his father died. And now Steve Cox is about 6'4", and he is a very big person with a very generous heart. And then as he stood at the casket, at the burial of his father, on the day his father died, when he was being buried, he took these enormous football player hands and he placed his fingers and hands on the top of his father's shiny casket. And then he said he flexed his fingertips deep into the casket wood. He said he just wanted to leave an imprint on his father's casket. And the last thing he said to his father was, Dad, all that time you spent with me made an impression on my life. With my hands, I now want to leave an impression on yours. And then he moved his hands back and he buried his father. The 7-minute life is about that. It's about having time to spend with your children. It's about having time to understand your purpose, your passions, what drives you, what gets you up in the morning. And it's about being able to have someone say, oh my, you left an impression on my life.